Hi, my name is Jessica Monge, and you're listening to Journey with Jess. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about my mental health journey. I will have special guests to talk about their mental health journey and some hot topics on mental health, too. Thanks for tuning in to my first ever episode. It's been long awaited. For everybody who's been waiting and hasn't known about the podcast since January, thank you. Today I'm going to talk about myself, introduce myself. So if you're new here, welcome again. And if you're not new here, we're going to go into depth about a few things of my past. So I was born and raised on Long Island, New York, as a Salvadoran American. My parents migrated here in the 80s and 90s. My mom was 15 when she came, and my dad was about 18 years old. He escaped the Civil War after he served his 2 years there and came here to New York. Why do I share that? Well, honestly, I feel like a big part of my identity and who I am now is because I was so prideful of what my father had done. He came here with little to no education. He dropped out in 3rd grade to help his family. He has a 3rd grade education, but here he started off as a dishwasher and worked his way up to an executive chef. For a long time, I looked up to him. Currently, as the podcast airs, I am in no communication with my father, and it has been a really hard journey to get to this point. But let's not skip ahead. So, born and raised in Long Island, New York. And trigger warning, I should have said this earlier, but I will talk about suicidal ideation. No attempts. We're not talking about that. And just my self-discovery on my mental health and stuff, I don't remember a lot of my childhood. And for a long time I wondered what was wrong with me. I was like, oh, I just have bad memory or whatever. But there's a reason for that. Recently realized, or my therapist told me, and I came to accept, that I am a survivor of childhood abuse. So that's probably why I don't remember a lot of my childhood. I remember the good things, some highlights, when you see highlight reels of things in the past. I remember maybe 5 tops. I started really remembering a lot more things around the 4th or 5th grade. That was that stood out to me. But by the time I was 11, I actually had my first suicidal ideation. I had texted a friend telling them that I wanted to, and I don't know how my parents found out. I don't know how they found out. But they were like, we need to talk to you. And then they brought it up. I was like, shoot. And they're like, do we need to find you a therapist? What's happening? And I was like, no. And honestly, I don't think I was exposed to those ideations. It just kind of happened. I don't know what part of me just was fed up and said that. But there was for a reason. I feel subconsciously there was a reason. So I was like, no therapy. Nah. Yeah, that was my first memory of an ideation. And prior to that, my mom had me on these crazy strict diets my entire life. She always wanted me to be really skinny. I have these memories of a Shakira music video would come on. She'd have me in a sports bra and shorts, and she'd be like, okay, let's go dance to the Shakira music video. Dance like her. And I was like, ugh, made me feel so awkward in my skin, made me very uncomfortable. Felt very sexualized in a way. And so she wanted me to be as small as possible. So I've been on diets since my earliest memory, 8. Wasn't allowed to eat in my aunt's house or ask for food. And if they offered me food, she'd give me this look. She would prep me before we go to my aunt's house. If they offer you food, you say no. But they were offering me food, and I'd look at my aunt's I want to eat, but I'm going to get in trouble. And now looking back at it, I'm just gosh, so many red flags. My mom was violent with me, but I honestly thought it was normal because I was oh, all immigrant parents hit their kids. No, my mom was on a different level. It's sad because reflecting on it, I wonder how many people tried to stop it and couldn't, or how many people were actually bystanders. I had my first ideation at 11. At 13, I really wanted to run away. Really was talking to friends, and I was I want to run away. By 18, I don't move out, or don't find my way. I have to run away from this place. It was just intolerable. That was 13. I still had so much depression that I didn't know I had. I didn't know what depression was till like the 9th or 10th grade. Around the 9th or 10th grade is when I took a psychology 101 class in high school. And I discovered what depression was. And I was like, yo, like, I have that. Totally self-diagnosing myself. But you have to remember, there is so much stigma behind therapy. And I was one of those people who did not believe in therapy at all. And besides that, I wanted to be in the legal field. So I was like, nope, not going to therapy, because then I won't be able to be like a cop or a lawyer or be an FBI agent. So I was like, nope, we're not doing that. But I self-diagnosed myself. I knew I had depression. I would sleep so much. And I was basically masking my happiness. I couldn't cry. I was just so sad. And like when I actually told one of my friends that I had depression, he's like, why are you sad? You have such a good life. And you have everything anybody would ever wanted. And he meant like material things. I had a beautiful home. My parents would hang out my awards, you know, kind of like proud of me, but just like showing that they were proud of me. They were actually, we was really affectionate about that. Had all the clothes that I needed or wanted. Had a phone, BlackBerry or iPhone, whatever it was. We had like 3 cars and everything looked great, right? We had the chandeliers, we had the portraits, family portraits, everything looked dancy. And he just looked at me like he didn't understand. And from his point of view, he was hopping from parent to parent and kind of felt displaced. In my head, I was like, you don't understand. But I also felt so guilty venting to him about it. But he was one of my best friends at the time. And I was like, who do I tell this to? I don't blame him. We're still very close. And I am glad that I didn't get upset over him not understanding. We were just young, you know? Found out around 10th grade. And then I had this internet friend, which at the time, looking back, I mean, it's like, I've never met that guy. We would just text every day, and he knew so much about me. I knew about him too. I confirmed he was a real person. It's not just like oh my god, a stranger on the internet. No, like he was like a friend of my ex, the guy I was dating at the time. Yeah, he was a real person. And at one point, he asked me, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" He was like, "You're sleeping much more than usual, and you usually sleep when something's wrong, when you're upset or sad." And I was like, it felt really nice to be like seen, you know. That was kind of like high school, and in the middle of all that, my parents would just fight so much. And I had found out my mom was dating these younger kids or like flirting with them. And I say kids because they were kind of like my age. They were only like maybe 2 or 3 years older than me, and it was very uncomfortable. My mom was cheating on my dad was cheating on my mom, and then I'd get texts like, I'm divorcing your mom, or we're gonna go like search your dad's car later at night to see if he has a secret phone. That was a lot. That was so much in high school. I was like, damn, like, all right, like constantly on like alert, constantly trying to protect my siblings from it all. It was hard. And then also trying to parent my parents, it was just like so much. And then trying to get good grades, trying to be a student athlete, trying to be involved in clubs, babysit, and just make sure everything was up to par. It was just so much. I was on such survival mode for a long time. Then I went off to college. And in college, the first year was so rough because I still had to come back home to babysit. I had to commute to Manhattan to go to college, and my mom was still very much like, you need to pull your weight and you need to babysit. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That didn't mean like missing out on a lot of soccer games or being late or just not playing at all. And that was hard. I couldn't balance it all. I also realized that I missed my brother's entire middle school experience during college, which was crazy. But I digress. In college, slowly I became detached from my responsibilities. And during the time, I also didn't speak to my mom for about like 2 to 3 years. I forgot what the fight was about, but I was just like, I'm not talking to you. So we lived in the same house. Wow, okay. So the reason why I didn't speak to her is because she had remarried secretly. At this point, I think they were already divorced. They had to be remarried, and then brought her man to live in the basement of our house. So I was like, well, that's weird. And my dad was okay with it, I guess. Question mark. Anyways, so I was so upset at her and so pissed, so I didn't talk to her for like a good 2-3 years. And because of all that, I was also able to just not be home. In college, I would sleep at people's dorms, or sleep at my friend's house, or sleep in my car. It's not as bad as it seems. I proclaimed myself as a nomadic, college student, and everybody knew me as having my 2-3 bags and always carrying extra clothes and making sure like I was good, and I was sleeping in someone's house. It was honestly the best time of my life. I cannot complain at all, although it is very sad, but it is what it is. I didn't invite my mom to my graduation in college. I was just like, no, I'm holding my boundary, and that's that. My aunt actually threw me a graduation party because she felt so bad that no one was celebrating me, and I think I wasn't the first person to graduate from my family, but it was like immediate family. I was the first person to graduate from college, so she did want to celebrate me, which was really nice. I'm just forever grateful. So I graduated spring of 2017. In that time, I found out my mom was pregnant with her fourth child. And I was like 22, 23 at the time. And I was like, oh, my grandma had actually told me. She like slipped up and told me. I was like, well, that's interesting. But we also weren't talking at the time, so why would she tell me? We slowly ended up talking again. I kind of wanted to be a part of my sister's life, but also the real hardcore denominator of it all was that I had bed bugs at the time, and so I needed help getting rid of it, and my mom was there to rescue me. So yeah, she helped me with that situation, so that's how we ended up talking too. And then she got to a little car accident, and she called me crying. That's how we ended up talking again. And I cannot tell you how much I love my little sister so much. My mom has made jokes saying oh, maybe this daughter will love me, and I was like, yeah, maybe. That was mean, but I was like, bro, at the time I was like, what have you done to make me love you besides you being my mom? Yeah, she cooks for me, cleaned for me, and was a stay-at-home mom, but a lot of the time she just left me a babysitter, was very abusive and violent, and didn't apologize. She would just come up to my room after a beating and then give me a cappuccino blast from Dunkin', and it's like, here, I made you this, and I'm just like, I don't want that, I want an apology. And she goes, you're never satisfied, and then stormed out, and she was upset at me. I was like, I literally just want an apology. I was 8, and I was just like, I just want a sorry. And she thought it was really funny to beat me in front of my friends too, but again, I digress. I'm so sorry. Shortly after I graduated college, I decided to go on a break because I didn't want to go straight into law school. I worked at a few law firms. Actually, first off, I worked for this immigration attorney. He sexually harassed me. I left there, went to a firm. The firm was okay, but it was really scary and really intense. And then one night after work, I went out with my boyfriend and my dad's ex-coworker. We went out to eat dinner, and then the coworker was like, oh, let's go out for drinks down the bar. And then the last thing I remember that my boyfriend had walked to the bathroom at the bar. Right. As soon as my boyfriend left, he's like, oh, I've always had a crush on you and stuff, but since you were Jose's daughter, I never said anything because my dad was his mentor. And I was like, oh yeah, haha, you're so funny. Last thing I remembered. And right before that, he had gotten our drink. I woke up. Trigger warning, because I forgot to say this in the beginning. I'm so sorry. But mention of essay, so if you want to leave now, you can leave now. But then I woke up and I was assaulted. Couldn't find my underwear, couldn't find my glasses, I couldn't find my phone, because apparently my boyfriend had taken them, or had them at the time. I didn't want to deal with the situation. I wanted to go home and forget it ever happened, so I told my boyfriend to just drive me home, and I wanted to sleep, and I cried, and I just wanted to numb everything out, because I was so good at this point to just like live my life with certain things and just pretend they never happened. There's things that to this day I've never told anybody. I just tried my best to forget it, but I couldn't. And like 2 weeks later, I don't remember how this chain of events happened, but I think 2 weeks later I reported, and it was hard. Like, it's really hard, like how they describe it on TV is kind of like how it is too. I had to tell my story to like 5 different people in 5 different rooms, and they were like, all right, are you sure you want to proceed? And it's kind of like, stop asking me, I'm already here, I just want to get it over with and talk about it. And you would have to say everything from the beginning. They would just be like, are you sure you want to proceed? Da, 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 da. I'm just like, listen, if anything comes out of this, at least like there's a report on this person, and if someone else comes forward about it, there's already a paper trail. That's the very least I want. I didn't have high hopes about this going to court, because I had thrown everything out, and it was 2 weeks prior, and I was completely blacked out, so I don't know what happened at all. But long story short, they did say that they couldn't proceed to go to court, and I was like, oh, okay. And I was at the train station, like Roosevelt Ave, and I was just like sad, but I couldn't cry again. I mean, so much of guilty crying. I was just pissed, I was pissed. Within those 2 weeks, I decided to tell my family, and so I had gathered my dad, my mom, and my brother JJ. He's the oldest one after me, not the little one. I don't think the little one was there. No, the little one wasn't there. He wasn't there. And I was holding my sister Melanie in my arms, and my boyfriend was in the living room, and I told them, and my dad immediately got upset with me, and he's like, why didn't you report sooner? Why didn't you say something? Like, you're always like all about like women's rights and all about this activism, but you couldn't do it for yourself. And he was upset at me, like, and I was like, what? Hello, sir? So I was like dumbfounded, and like I think my brother cried and he helped me, but then my parents were like, where was your boyfriend? Oh, well, so they went to go talk to him, and they were so mad at him. They didn't trust him for a long time. A few months later, like 5 months later, I was like just such an angry person. I was like so fed up, and I was taking it out on like my loved ones, and by loved ones I mean mainly my boyfriend. He was so patient with me, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. I think we should break up. I don't feel anything for you. I don't feel anything at all. I just don't want to deal with anything. And so we tried breaking up, and that didn't work out. So I broke up for a week, but we talked every day. It just didn't work out. I was just like, I don't have feelings for you. I don't know what to do. I don't think we should be together. Maybe the only thing that could help is maybe going to therapy, but like I don't know if that's gonna work. And he's like, well, I'll be with you throughout that, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but I want to be with you throughout your journey and stuff. So he is really to thank, guys, for me going to therapy, and me figuring out my mental health, and me providing my therapist service. So thank him. So I decided to go, and I started January, I think 2019 or 2018. 2019. January 2019. No, January 2018. Sorry. I started January 2018, and then what I was looking for was someone who specialized in victims, right? Survivors. And so I went to this white woman, and it was fine. I was like, oh, I love all this spiritual stuff. Like, that's who I am. She gave me books to read, like the 4 Agreements, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. She told me to write this letter to my assailants, told me to bring it in, and then she read it, and then she was like telling me, it doesn't matter how much you drank at the end of the day. You have to take some responsibility for it. And I was like, no, I have absolutely drank after that, and I actually drank the same amount I drank that same night, because I had only 3 tequila sunrises. And I was like, this is absurd. I don't blank out after 3 drinks. I had also joined a sorority, so I was drinking a lot. So like, there's no way that 3 tequila sunrises was gonna black me out. I was like, no, you're wrong. I actually have drank double that since then, to just test myself and my body to see if there was something wrong with me, or if he did something to me. And so She goes, well, you still drank though. And I, didn't have the courage to say anything. But thank goodness I went to school for psychology. Because I knew after that it was not my fault at all. Like, it is not my fault. No. So I was so tight. And she's like, oh, well, do you want to burn this piece of paper or rip it up or anything? And I was like, no. I'm like, done. So I went to the car and all I thought about was that if this was me, maybe like 6 years ago, I probably would have offed myself because of where I was mentally in my teenage years, easily. Thankfully, I had a stronger mindset at that time, and I had already studied psychology to know what was what. But this woman straight up victim blamed me, and she specializes in these things. I swore I wouldn't go to therapy again, and then I just was miserable again. I was angry and upset. So I decided to keep it another time, and I went to this other lady, and she was nice, she was sweet, but she wasn't really like giving me anything to work on and stuff. Like, I was like, where do I go from here, instead of just talking about my week? And so one week she was like, oh, so how is it going? What did you do this week? I'm like, oh, I feel good. Like, I'm pretty happy. I worked out this week, and so yada yada. And she's like, okay, great. It doesn't seem like we have anything else to talk about it, but keep up the good work. And I was like, is that my session? Like, I am here to get over my assault. Are you serious right now? So I quit again. And then she actually messaged me later, and she was like, hi, I just want to see how you're doing, if you want to come back. And I was like, no. And then at that time, I don't know, I think I heard it off a podcast. I don't remember where I saw it, but I discovered virtual therapy, and I was like, I love that. I don't want to go into a room or an office and talk to someone one-on-one. Like, they're right there. It makes me uncomfortable. I want to do it virtually. So that's how you know this was before COVID. I was like, wow. Then I tried BetterHelp, and I found a wonderful therapist. She was great. She actually made me realize that I had PTSD symptoms from the assaults, and we were going to start CBT, and that's cognitive behavioral therapy. What happened? Okay, so we were talking about like my relationship with my father and how he was doing something that was very inappropriate, and she just didn't understand me culturally, and I was just like, okay, I need to switch again. Luckily in BetterHelp it's very easy to switch. You just like go to the hamburger bar and just switch therapist. So that's what I did, and then that's where I found my wonderful Latina therapist. I'm still with her, bro. Like, I'm still with her. So yeah, that's where I found my fourth therapist, and it took about like a little over 6 months to go through this entire process. She was wonderful. She understood me culturally, and like we went from a lot of different phases, and we went from talking about my assault to realizing that I think a lot of the root causes of who I am today and all my anxiety and trauma and depression besides the assault is my childhood trauma. And I think what happened was that right before the assault, I was living a great life. I was really happy with where I was in my life, and I was really just the ideal person that I wanted to be. And then the assault just kind of like opened Pandora's box and just spewed out all my trauma, and so it unleashed the beast. So there was a lot of other stuff that I needed to work on foundationally, and so that's what I'm doing now. I'm still seeing my therapist once a week. She's wonderful, and now I know I have depression. I had medication for anxiety. I started medication for anxiety around like 2021, and it did help. I felt like great, and then I stopped it because I felt like it wasn't working anymore. But when I first took it, man, that knocked me on my butt because I was so fatigued. But it was great. I think it was wonderful. Medication was something that I was super against for a long time, and my therapist brought me to realize was that it's okay to start to be on medication while I'm working on therapy, because it's not like I'll be on medication forever. It's kind of something just to assist me while I'm going to therapy. And also, like, we wouldn't see someone with a physical illness and be like, oh, you're taking medication, don't take medication, and all the other stuff, like, so stigmatized, so sad. But depression, anxiety, PTSD symptoms, I'm pretty sure I have some form of disordered eating. It's just really bad, especially from like what my mom's done to me. And what else? I'm pretty sure I have undiagnosed ADHD. It's so freaking hard. But yeah, that is me right now. I will say that I have gained a lot of emotional intelligence with my therapist, and it's something that I didn't know or didn't understand in the past, and I'm really happy. I am setting a lot of boundaries. I don't talk to my father, like I said before. I am talking to my mother here and there, but with a lot of boundaries, because not for nothing, but my mom's a narcissist. So shout out to everybody who has a narcissistic mother. So thank you for listening, and there might be more updates in the future. Welcome to a journey with Jess.